Hey everybody, welcome to another episode of That Early Childhood Nerd. I'm Heather Bernt-Santy, and I have Mike Huber here on the show this week. Hi, Mike.
Hello.
And back again is Stacy Benge. Hi, Stacy.
Hi, thanks for having me.
Yeah, I'm so glad you're here. Folks who have listened for, I don't know, a couple of months at least will recognize you from the last time you were on to talk about your book, The Whole Child Alphabet: How Young Children Actually Develop Literacy. Which is published by Exchange. And I'll say this now because otherwise I'll forget. You can order this from Exchange and use the code. I did this last time too, Nerd15, I think, and you get a discount. I'll check it while you guys are talking and then help me remember to say it again at the end. I should have been prepared better. Sorry, no one's surprised when I do this stuff, right? Mike listened to the episode that you and I did, Stacy, and emailed me and was like, "Oh my God, I have to record with her too, and let's talk about the vision chapter."
I'm so honored.
Specifically. I get that, but I'm so glad you're here. I mean, not that I get it that it's like me and you should be honored. I get that feeling of being like, "Oh, this is someone I've listened to for a while."
Yes.
And now I'm on the show. Sorry, this is bad. This may be my worst podcast beginning ever. Okay, so let's do this.
I bet I can. No, never mind.
Yeah, Mike has a list that he'll email me later. The chapter is called Letter Recognition Begins with Vision. And so for our starting point, I'll just read this little bit from the first page. Think of all the times children are asked to look and identify objects. We get very excited when they start to recognize and identify letters and words. Being able to do this requires more than just memorization. It requires a sense of sight. Without it, children cannot distinguish the unique markings that differentiate each letter. This goes deeper than just eyesight. Reading, writing, and alphabet knowledge depend on visual perception, the brain's ability to make sense of the information coming in through the eyes. And when I first read this, I was like it blew my mind. It seems like, oh, well, of course it's not just eyesight, but I read it and I was like, oh my God, yes, it's not just eyesight. Because I really, we do vision screenings in preschools or early childhood programs a lot. And I was a kid who had glasses at 5, so I've always just thought about eyesight, but I forget the brain part of it, right? Like, what do you do with it once it's there? So, Stacy, do you want to say anything about that before we unleash Mike with his questions?
Well, and which I think I kind of touched on too on the last podcast, but how I kind of really started to learn about this was my journey as a parent with my oldest son. Yeah. And it was kind of the same thing. Like, he kept putting his head on this desk, he kept covering an eye, and he passed the little screening they do with the nurse at school, and then I eventually took him to a developmental optometrist who diagnosed him with convergence insufficiency. And then a couple of years later, when I took him to an OT, went even further. But I think that's what really opened my eyes to, oh wow, there is so much more going on here, and why do we not give this credit where it's due when it comes to literacy and reading and writing. So that's kind of the origin of how I started going down the journey and learning about it.
Yeah, and I think that comes from I haven't read this term before, so I don't know if it's a real one or if I've just made it up, but a neuroableist point of view, right? That there's this assumption that, well, of course, everyone just has this ability to process their vision or, any of the senses. It's that same thing. And it's only when someone is neurodivergent or, I think technically that would be considered neurodivergent too, because it's the processing part, that it becomes an issue. And part of that is, it shouldn't be considered an issue. It should just be, everyone has to develop this. Some children do it fairly just through regular things that happen. But the more and this is where your book as a whole does it, where the more we push this academic focus and learning to read is about, or any literacy is about, doing these little drawings, coloring sheets of the letter of the week or whatever. aside from the letter of the week part, which I love that chapter too. But
I thought you were going to say, which I love, end of sentence.
I did too.
no,
I did
yeah,
too.
I
was
love
like,
letter
oh,
of the
God.
week. I can't believe what you said about it. It's just no.
No, it is another chapter of the book.
It is another chapter of the book, but that's not what we're talking about right now. But
Spoiler
I mean,
alert, I don't like letter of the week.
Yeah.
Yes, yeah. Yeah. She's on the record for not liking it. But just that idea, pushing tablets or other technology, pushing paper even, right? I mean, not like drawing and stuff, yes, but not like adult writing on kids. It's like their vision, it's just this 12-inch, or whatever the distance is for a child. And they're not developing their vision, but the more like, oh, well, we want to worry about this, so we're gonna do things that normally you would wait till the person has actually developed their sense of vision, that the eyesight working with the brain and processing and all that. And first it'd be like pointing at the school bus that's driving down the road, or the airplane in the sky, all these, or throwing a ball and tracking it, like all these things that would just be part of play. But when we start pushing down the academics, I mean, you could look at any sense and it's the same thing, because academics mean you forget about most of the senses at all, or like even eyesight, even though you're using your eyes, they didn't take into consideration the development of that ability. So that was long-winded, but so that wasn't a question, but I mean, for me, that's what it, like, you start it with the problem, right, of finding out about it because of your son. But then it's like, but we all do it, which is, kind of where you go with the book. So I really appreciated both the starting point of like, yeah, there are going to be problems with it, but also the whole reason that this book is needed is because if we don't go against some of the trends in early childhood, more kids are going to have this difficulty. And then, anyways, that.
Well, and I think that's, and just kind of like to the point of like, I feel like we are just, it's so simple. Like if we just let children play and then we just acknowledge child development and all as these foundations, it's like everybody be just so much better off. But instead it's like we're, pushing these academics down, and it's not just recognizing these foundational skills that need to be developed first, and how do they develop with just children playing. And so that's what I tried to kind of break down. And especially like in that the chapter on vision, just if children are just outside running around, and I just listened to y'all's podcast the other day on pushing kids on the swing and talking about the importance of that. Well, if you're on a swing and you're going back and forth, if you have a teacher in front of you, or if you're talking to a friend, or if you're just looking at the school building, you're going from nearsighted to farsighted, just back and forth. Well, that kind of helps our brain make that quick transition. And I even kind of connected in the book. I'm like, well, that's a child eventually sitting in a classroom, looking up at a board, looking down at their paper. But it's just those simple opportunities as a child, but they're not getting it because we're robbing them of that by just going, oh, wait, that you've got to learn these letters, or you've got to learn these numbers, or whatever it is. And then even to the point of like children, when parents always ask me for advice, some of the simple things I say is like, okay, on your way to school in the mornings, no screens. Just sit in the car and look out the window, listen to what's going on. When you go to the grocery store, no screens, let the child be connected with all of their surroundings, because it's amazing how them existing in that really helps develop the brain and develop all these senses. And again, it's super simple, it's super easy, but it's super powerful and necessary.
Right. I think it's another example of, I say a lot that the push down academic kind of focus benefits the teachers whose image of the teacher is these discrete skills, letters, numbers, whatever. And that's how they feel like they're teaching. And you start talking about play, and that threatens that identity that they have of themselves. that, well, then how am I a teacher if they're just playing? And this kind of in-depth background, foundational information about visual development that you've got in this chapter really highlights well, here's how you still are an expert. Here's how you still bring professionalism to the job and are a teacher, by understanding that it's not just seeing the letter and being able to say the name and maybe remember the sound. It's looking at the letter and your brain has to figure out what to do with it, right? And so that doesn't start with just letters. That's their whole life around them, right? Is an opportunity to develop that.
Yeah, absolutely. And just and everything starts somewhere too. And so it's, it's appreciating, it's not that top down, but it's appreciating from that starting point, even before birth, and then just building and developing from there, and going from that point on.
Right. And now I'm remembering when I was listening to you two talking last episode, one of the phrase I started using, and now realize that I actually haven't told either of you, because it was when I thought we were going to record a few weeks ago.
You.
So I was like, oh yeah. But I've been using the phrase creating the conditions for learning. Like, that's the job of a teacher. And that if a teacher needs to feel like they have an active role, that's the active role. And that does mean having swings and using them. It does mean not using screens, I guess, from a parent's perspective, not using screens so you're creating those conditions where then the child is looking around. And then the teacher has to have that knowledge of, right, that is the development they need right now. And it's funny because I just used the word development, which I feel like is the drinking game when Stacy's on now. Right, because wasn't it you were talking about being a developmentalist, right? I'm not confusing this.
Yeah.
I used that phrase for the first time at work today. Because I'm at a new workplace.
It's really resonating with people.
Yeah.
I have gotten so much feedback about that after the last podcast. Yeah.
Because someone suggested something today, and I was explaining because in kindergarten they have to, whatever. And I just said, and so we're a brand new center. We don't open for a few weeks still. So we're just training. And we just started with what are our own values around education and how to, all of that. And we're getting to the point now of what does that mean on a day-to-day basis, like in the classroom. And now it's because when it was just the values and ideas, everyone was in agreement. And now, but I've been doing it this way.
But what do I do with my scripts?
Yeah. And now,
with my previous scripts?
I've got the scripts. And so when they said the thing about, but in kindergarten, they have to do this. And I said, well, hold on. Just so you know, here at the center, we won't do anything just because they do it in kindergarten, just like we won't teach kids to drive, even though when they're 28, they're going to learn to drive, maybe younger.
Maybe earlier. The really smart ones wait till 20.
What we know is developmentally appropriate for, I didn't say developmentally appropriate because I avoid that phrase now.
Yeah.
We do what we know children need right now with the children we have. And then it said, so, we're developmentalists. We're not, our job isn't to make them first graders. Right. They will develop into first graders or something like that. But I used the word developmentalist for the first time. And not even kind of forgetting. I think, oh, wait, I'm going to actually.
That's what's going to happen. Yeah. So, I was at NACI a week ago, whenever that was, and I went to a session that Defending the Early Years did, and Denisha Jones and Keisha Reed were speaking, and Denisha was like, I just heard about this developmentalist thing, and I think Heather over here is the one who introduced me. I was like, oh no, that's Stacy Benge, and it's in this book, and you should.
Oh my gosh! Oh wow,
that's not me, but I love it.
Yeah, it's great. It is. Because it really, I wanted to talk about vision, but also, it just puts a lens on everything. Yeah. We could talk about any chapter in the book, I suppose, in that way. But what I liked about the vision one is, I guess also because as a parent, my child also has an issue right now in reverse, because they're 19, they got hit by a car, have some vision issues, and it's all brain based. It's not their eyes, but they can't always stand up. right? They can't
wow.
read. They're a reader and they only can use audiobooks now. It's
Oh
been
no.
13 months,
Oh,
and they can read a little bit now. But, for someone who read all the time, writes, has short plays produced and things, and all this. And now it's like, they're even like looking into, they have to get software to do voice to text to try to write, because it's coming back slowly, but like the ability, and it's about something about their peripheral vision and their like straight on vision, whatever, not coordinating in their brain. And it messes them up. So they can't read.
wow.
They get nauseous. It's as if they're moving when they're trying to read now, basically.
Oh.
So anyways, sorry.
Yeah. It's interesting because part of my frustration with kind of the space early childhood education's in right now, or the place we're going, or have been for a while, really only tends to, as we sometimes say, see children from the neck up, or value them from the neck up in terms of what kind of cognitive stuff they can memorize and spit out. But even in that, we're not really seeing the full cognitive picture.
Right.
And I think the way that you outline in the chapter the kind of the elements of it. So you talk about perception, and you talk about visual attention and discrimination and visual memory. So I think highlights that, even then we're not even really focusing on, I see it as we've isolated this one domain of development, but we're still not really seeing that domain developing. We're trying to cram things into the brain, but we're not paying attention or necessarily seeking out or being curious about the processes in the brain.
Yeah, exactly. Like the kind of those underneath that came out wrong.
Welcome.
Y'all know what I meant. See, y'all, I was meant to be here all along.
If people wanted accuracy right away, they'd read a book and not listen to podcasts.
Listen to me. So can I don't want to go through every one of them, because it would be a very long podcast, and also because people should just buy the book and read the whole thing
too, but
and the code, by the way, is just ECE nerd. There's no number in it. You do get 15% off, but it's just all caps ECE nerd. I had to look it up. But so can I ask you about a couple of them though, or will that feel like quizzy?
No, I've got my book right here.
Okay, good. Because I just was kind of looking at the ones that maybe some of these things maybe we've heard of, but like form constancy was something that as I read it, I was like, okay, that makes sense, but it's not a phrase that I had thought about or learned about much.
Yeah, and that one is really like where you can where it relates really to like the alphabet is it's seeing an object in different forms and recognizing it's still the same. So
is that what you're doing with
for the video? Oh, yeah, I was just holding a duck one way, the other way, from the top.
Okay, all right.
Yeah. So no matter how you hold the duck, it's still a duck, or what position it's in, or if the duck was a different color, and how that kind of there you go. But it's still
a duck.
Mike came
prepared only for the YouTube
with rubber ducks.
And so and how that really like translates to literacy is seeing a letter in different fonts. And and one of the things that I put in the book, and this really, I will say, is probably a part that I'm like, it's just something I kind of believe is like, when we're writing in front of children, or if we're labeling the room, which I go a little rant on that in that chapter, but use different fonts as long as it's it's legible, and but like letters exist in different ways, and that's that's part of literacy, is being able to recognize it. But that form constancy is kind of that underlying, and working puzzles is very is a great way of developing that. And my oldest son, who has some issues with form constancy, we as a family, like every Christmas, we'll get together with my brother and his kids, and we always work like a 2,000-piece puzzle over the holiday break.
Uh-huh.
And then, but I noticed that my oldest son would not participate. And anyway, once we kind of started honing in on this, I'm like, well, it makes sense. I mean, it's difficult for him to recognize the puzzle piece over there when it's in a different position than it actually belongs in the puzzle. So
yeah.
So that's the form constancy.
Which, and puzzles, that's another, or an example of how we try to categorize everything in our spaces into like learning areas or whatever. And sometimes regulations tell you have to, and puzzles always end up in like fine motor. And, you know, it's just because of the finger stuff, finger motions, hand motions. Almost said hand stuff, but I stopped myself. Aren't you proud of me?
But then you had to stop and
but
say
then I
it.
stopped. But then
You're
I
still
still
hesitant.
want the credit for the self-control in the moment. This time it was anyway. So, but this is a really good case for puzzles being literacy, right? And so it's an example of how all of the development is interrelated and overlaps. And if we're just thinking about teaching content, we lose that. But if we think about development, we can see that.
Right.
Yeah, absolutely. And think of all the, you know, like if building blocks, it's kind of the same thing. You're moving the block around different positions. Well, you know, that's another example of how something is not literacy based per se, but it's very much directly connected to it.
Sure, it's still contributing to that goal we have.
Right. And if you wanted to take that one step, well, thinking more about the hand motion, I think of like schema. That's kind of what that part's about, right? Of rotating and all that, like being able to, some of that is the visual, the way your brain's processing the visual. And it's also that like eye hand part too of like, when I do this, it does this, so, you know, so.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah. And you talk about this in the book too, but just along those lines, writing and pre-writing is also literacy, but we don't pay other than like handwriting drills, we don't always pay a lot of attention to that side of literacy. We're just looking at letter recognition and
exactly, which is just it's necessary but not sufficient. It's just a small little component of it.
It's not the only thing. So hold on, I'm looking at my little thingies here. What else? I was going to ask you too to talk about visual closure. That was another one that I thought might be new to some people.
So this is like pretty much like if you see just an example, and I give it in the book, but I have lived with this as a parent so much. I mean, my kids are adults now, but like when they were still at home, but this is like if you go to look for something in your closet, and let's say you're looking for a shoe or a stuffed animal that's fallen in there, and you only see a portion of it. Visual closure is that part of your brain that goes, oh, the heel of this goes
with the
to
rest
the shoe.
Of the shoe.
Wait, yes, I missed the demonstration, Mike.
Everybody's missing it until
the tail of the duck
comes out. Yes,
and then it turns out it's still a duck.
It's still a duck.
And that would be brilliant when people watch the video, but for the audio, it's going to be
like
very
a 3 or
confusing.
4-year-old when you have a bin of Legos. And they're looking, and all they can do is dump the whole thing out because they're only seeing a corner. And you can see the 5 and 6-year-olds know, oh, there's the corner. That's the piece I'm looking for because that's all they needed. And
one of the reasons that I changed the last time I was teaching in a preschool age room, I changed my block area and took the blocks off the shelf with the contact paper shape and everything, and I put it in buckets because I felt like that was, you know, the thinking is that if we have the shape on the shelf and all the blocks of the same shape go in the same place, that's a cognitive matching activity. But I felt like having to search for the block you have in mind or the block that will solve your problem was a little bit more on the what Lily and Katz would differentiate from the intellectual skill and the academic skill, right? Like it was more of an intellectual exercise to go through the bucket and try and find that shape.
Now I feel like we need Maria Montessori to come on to debate with you. I don't think
know.
she's available.
She's not available, and she's not invited.
Yeah.
Sorry, Montessori people.
No, but I think that's a
Maria's
great
fine.
point.
Maria's fine.
Yeah. We wouldn't have child-sized chairs in our
No,
classrooms without her.
she did a lot of great, wonderful,
Yeah.
smart things.
Yeah. No, but I think that's a great example of what that means in a classroom. Right. And a good way of like how to change the script you have
Yeah.
for what a classroom looks like.
Yeah. And two, like if you get like, look at how like visual closure again ties to literacy is like, when you're reading, as you kind of start to learn the words, we're not having to read the entire full word. You kind of start to read just the first part and your brain starts going, oh, it's this word. And it kind of helps with that,
Right.
that speed of reading whenever that time does come. But that's how that all, connects with that.
Yeah.
Right.
Which,
yeah, for sure. And that's, of course, you need to have read it enough to then be able to sort of
right.
predict,
which means
or
you
whatever.
need repeated experience with favorite books.
Yes.
Even if the adult is tired of reading that book.
Yes.
And you need repeated, like just doing games that are visual, right? Everything for a child who has sight, everything is visual, right? Like, so playing chase, roughhousing, going up the slide, going down the slide, looking at a favorite book, having a favorite book read to you, drawing. I mean, everything is visual. And I think, again, we tend to like slice up things of like, oh, here's some stuff that's visual. I'm going to get the big, book to read to the entire class so they can see it. And it's not saying that's a bad thing. It's a great thing, but that's not the only thing that's visual.
Exactly.
Right? Anytime you're telling the kids, look at me, and they're looking out the window, right? Like, oh, they're seeing something in the sky that's more interesting than watching your mouth move.
And maybe takes more skill. Like it practices a different skill.
And it's actually preparing them.
Yeah.
And telling them over and over actually isn't going to help them self-regulate anyways.
Yeah.
Like do something that draws their attention. Don't threaten them.
Yeah.
Try flying.
Try flying if you want to be interesting. So do you think that any of this, what we've just been talking about, fits into that, the child who's always like, I can't see. And the teacher's like, you're right in front of the book. Of course you can see. You know what I mean? Like when you're trying to do a group reading, there's always that one who's like, wants to move because they can't see, or that could be one of the things maybe is that they're just
it could be
needing
I'm
to
not
practice
sure.
one of these things. That just popped into my mind.
Like I'm gonna have to go look that up and see.
Yeah,
but I'm not,
for part 2 for your next book, you can include that.
Yeah, exactly.
When you do the new edition. Maybe somebody has that answer. I just popped into my head as we were talking about reading big books.
If it could be like a visual seeking too of wanting to kind of get closer to the the illustrations. I don't know.
There is that thing, right, where they like the kid who wants to just stand up and put their face right in the book. And there is something to that, right? That it's hard to I don't have the list up again. But thinking about that way of being able to, some of it to me is just filtering out. Like I'm focused on this one, the mouse in a Mercer Mayer, Critters book.
I love Mercer Mayer little Critters.
And it's like there's all this other stuff going on, but I have to focus on this one little thing. And so they might need to go up close to be able to do that because there's too much visual noise for them to do that.
Oh, okay,
or something.
So
like
maybe
that.
it's more like a figure ground thing then.
I was gonna say figure ground.
I'm totally just talking off whatever.
That's okay. You're
I do what I do.
welcome.
I'm doing the right thing.
That's why we have you here, Mike. That and only that. That and your duck collection. Okay, so later in the chapter then, Stacy, you say understanding this information helps debunk the earlier is better myth. And then you go on to talk about how we can use this to talk to stakeholders who maybe question play. So why does it push back against that earlier is better, or what debunks it about understanding all this?
I think kind of going to like, what we've been saying is that it's that when stakeholders are buying into, we've got to just be introducing the letters earlier. We've got to introduce the writing, the reading. And when we are able to actually articulate, all of these foundational skills and not only what they are, but like how they develop as well, I think that just helps us in the conversation going, okay, I know you're excited to see children read, or I know you're excited to see them learn the alphabet, but let me tell you some things that have to be in place first. And then when you can start, breaking it down, and let me tell you how it develops. It doesn't develop by us sitting here and just, going through the scripted curriculum. It develops by children actually moving around and playing and going outside and doing all the things that we mentioned. Those are critical components for that. So I think it kind of, hopefully, my hope is that it gives people those talking points, and might not change something at that moment, but maybe it'll plant a seed that eventually.
I have a story for that one. And now I'm like,
I can't believe
kind of
it.
upset at you, Stacy, that you didn't write the book earlier. But no, I talked to, I think it was my Rotary Club, or it could have been like the Elks or something, but some fraternal organization.
Kiwanis, it was the Kiwanis.
And it was not the Kiwanis.
Okay.
I do know that, much to my father's chagrin.
Yeah.
But they wanted to give, they were like, oh yeah, we have money we could give for, your classroom. And I was talking about how I wanted a loft in my room. And they said, well, we really, we're hoping to fund literacy.
Yeah.
And so I explained how it was literacy, right? And so, and they bought it, and I didn't have a lot of the terminology here, from this, but I talked about the way, one of the things I remember saying, because some of it was about pretend play, right? And so more the story, like that idea of making your own story and all, but one of the things I talked about was that ability to like see things. So it'd be form constancy basically. And then you go up the stairs and look down on it. And, but I didn't have a book that just, because obviously there are books about that. They're just not early childhood books. Right. So I didn't have any of the language around it, but I did.
This one is how young children
my way through,
actually deserve to
yes.
develop.
I know you talked about it last time.
Not any of that other stuff that actually is going to happen.
That, all I have to do is say that part of the title. And I've had, I don't know how many people, because I do want royalties on this, because they, a few people are like, oh, I do have to get that. Because I have a friend who started a new job same time as me, but it's like a staff that's been there forever, and just trying to explain to them, why they're going to do things a little differently. And but they're like, but the kids have to learn to read, and so I said, oh, you need this book. And as soon as I pulled out the word actually, she was like, wait, and just pulled it, like right there on her phone. Like, I got to buy it.
We got to get it right now.
I love it.
Although she didn't get her 15%. I hope she's not mad at me.
Oh, well, maybe they'll give her a refund. Anyway, I was going to say something about that. Oh, just one of the things I like, and I said this before, I feel like this is one of a handful of books that I read, and I'm like, everybody needs to read this. Everybody who's working with children needs to read this one. But I think it's not that everyone who is dumb and they need to read this to not be dumb anymore. It's like some of it is going to be, I do this already, and I'm so proud of myself for doing this already. And now I have language to describe what I've just been doing because I know it's like the right thing, or I just have this instinct, or I took a class, but I don't feel comfortable talking about it to the stakeholders, whoever they might be. And I feel like this is really laying it out.
Yeah. And I think for me, I would sometimes say, oh, sorry. Well, that's my job. That's why I'm here.
Yes, that's also why you're here.
But just that I've sort of said, well, kids are going to put all the things together.
Yeah.
Later, and that's okay. We're giving them all the foundation, but for people who want a little more of that, well, what do you mean foundation? Because I can just have them sound out these words, isn't that foundation? It's like, well, that is an element of it, but also just the visual tracking and now I don't have the terms in front of me, the form constancy and visual closure, all these
nice work
are like, like having that for the parent who is unconvinced, or the funder, or the and it when you talk about it, it's like, we need more catapults, like hands down.
The research is there.
The research is here. I can't tell you how, because I probably have more catapults than most in my classrooms, but it's like, it's always been like, I mean, you watch the kid who like watches it go up, and they can also know like just how hard they hit it as they're looking down, because they usually look down while they hit it, and they know where to look in the sky already. If they kind of didn't quite hit hard, they kind of look, you know, more like, I don't know, just a few feet up off the ground. And if they really hit it hard, they're looking straight up, because they know they're tracking like that, what their foot did just now, or even the speed of the thing as it's going up, being able to know where to move your head, let alone your eyes, you know, like,
and to catch it in your line of vision if you lose it.
And then to catch it. Because I remember when I was writing my Rough and Tumble book, writing about how to play catch with a toddler and talking about how they don't have that ability. And the best part was I was kind of stuck. So I walked to a park and I'm sitting there, and this person shows up with a toddler playing catch.
Yeah, I
sent
them.
See the child like just stand there. She'd throw the ball. It would like go in the air, you know, in an arc, bounce twice, and the child would just be kind of standing there blankly. And as soon as it was still, you saw like this recognition on the kid's face, and they'd run to the ball, and they could not do anything else yet. And I watched it over and over, and then I wrote the part of the book, and then I went and told her afterwards, and I thought it was just some creep in the park or something. Like, no, I couldn't figure out how to explain how to
not just any creep in the park. You're not. Mike's not a creep. But Mike's not a creep.
I think, you know, I whatever. Anyways,
yeah, sorry, I threw that one off.
Yeah, no, but just that thing, like, you could watch the child who wasn't at that point yet. And I was writing about just physical development, you know, whatever. No, but easily, you know, it could be talked about in terms of alphabetic or literacy development, you know, and that, go ahead.
So that was one of my hopes too, which I know that we talked about on the last podcast. But again, it's like that. It doesn't have to be a literacy activity to support literacy. And I actually did something the other day, and somebody on there asked me about literacy activities for like infants, and this person used that as an interview question. And she said, you know, and she's always looking for something beyond just reading a book. And I was like, well, I think it's kind of a paradigm shift, and not looking at, you know, it's almost like what's not literacy. I mean, because you really, truly, when you understand how all this develops, how they actually develop, but how it all comes together, that it's like everything, as long as children are playing, it is in some form or fashion supporting literacy.
And that's my favorite part of the chapter, I think, is the like lacing items, marble runs, pegs and pegboards, puppets, Lincoln logs, Tinker toys, with trademarks, of course, empty boxes, books, gross motor, you know, it just crawling. Right? Like, people don't think of crawling as being a literacy skill, except for OTs, they do.
Right.
But, balls for bouncing. So there goes the part I was talking about. Scarves, you know, just all these, like, I love that you actually do lay it out. Like, here's what you do in the room.
So here are the things that are important in this subject area or whatever, and then here's how you can support it. I mean, you do a really good job with that, Stacy.
Thank you.
Yeah, no, that was like, there's many parts in this book where I'd use the word genius, and that.
Oh wow.
You know what I mean?
Thank you.
It's
Y'all
just
are
like
making me feel so good.
But you know, people talk about play, and it's in some ways hard because it does everything. So then people who are hesitant are like, well, you know.
Now you're just playing with semantics. It can't possibly be everything, but it is everything.
But you like lay it out first of here's like what, you know, visual development is, or you know, and now let's look at these toys, and it's like, right, it's the same thing. I could have listed the same thing in my Rough and Tumble book and would have listed almost exactly the same thing, right? You know? So I just love that about it, that it's like, you've got the justification, got the understanding. And it's so cool because then when you watch kids, or the kids who aren't developing typically, like something's off. And I think a lot of teachers feel like they can't possibly figure it out. And yet,
Yeah.
with just a little more information, it's like, oh, you might actually,
Yeah.
figure some of this out. I mean, still, developmental pediatrician or whatever is
Right.
going,
Right.
but you might be able to give the parent a little bit, I think you should go to the developmental pediatrician, and you talk about the fact that they only look at the book with one eye, or
Exactly. Yeah.
right, like knowing the details you're going to tell the parent to tell.
Right.
Yeah.
Which I think that's a key thing when you're talking with parents, is letting them know that there's one more step past the pediatrician, not that, but just, here's enough information for you to have a conversation to help you make some decisions past that initial appointment with the pediatrician.
And it's going to help that pediatrician understand, oh, wait, this is beyond my,
exactly.
Like you're giving me these things.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Okay, so can we do designing the visual environment piece? It's just like one paragraph in here, but I want to talk about it because this will not be a surprise to either of you, and probably to a lot of people listening. There is such we talk so much about environmental prints that we just feel like we have to have alphabets everywhere and posters everywhere and charts everywhere, and in addition to the idea that we feel like we need to have super bright primary colors for it to be learning. But so you talk about how to think about the environment in terms of this visual development that you've been discussing, and you say when there are no children in the room, it should appear neutral and almost bland.
Yes.
Yeah.
Because and I think that there's definitely like some give and take on that, but I know, like, especially like 15, 20 years ago, we were, well, and some rooms are still like this, but where you have every color on the color wheels there, and you've got things hanging, and it's to me, if you walk into a classroom and there's no children there and you're overwhelmed with the visual aspect of it, it's too much. And so it's kind of like, what is that starting point? And I kind of like in the tail end of my career in the classroom, I would just start, like when I would get my room together, I would think of it as being just a little bit on the bland side when I'd started out, because once the children walk in and you've got their different, hair color and skin color and clothes and their backpacks, and then you have their movement, which is going to add a visual aspect as well, that's going to add to, to what all's being seen in the classroom. And so to me, if you kind of start with that little bit neutral, a little bit on bland, the children are going to add the rest of that color that needs to be there. And then it's like, if you feel like, okay, I need to add a little bit more, you can,
and I'm not suggesting that we don't have any environmental print, like we don't have any letters anywhere or labels or written language or anything like that, but it needs to be purposeful and meaningful, right?
Correct.
It's not just because it was in the catalog in the literacy section or whatever.
Alphabet charts are the one that you one of the things you pull up that I thought was great, because it is that thing. It's in accreditation. It's in most states licensing, all this stuff. And it's like, what evidence has anyone ever done research about how children use alphabet charts? Because I think you say in the book that you've never seen anyone use it. I've only seen.
I've never seen a kid go up and go, oh, you know what?
I finally made like just like an alphabet, like 8.5 by 11. I just laminated a few sheets for the kids who wanted to spell, and they were like, wait, how do I write that letter? Like they're trying to write their friend's name, and so they were like reference sheets. But they were just. There, and the same thing, like recipe cards with words that they always asked, how do I write mom? How do I write love?
I
used to have sentence strips, with children's names written. It was laminated and it was just in a box so that those who wanted to use it could use it. Or if like I had this one little boy who was 4 and was really into wanting to know how to write letters and how to spell things. So I would write them for him, and other children were there watching, and we ended up with each child had a pocket in a shoe, over the door shoe bag kind of thing, where they could ask me to write a word and I'd put it
You
in
didn't just say, well, look up
pocket.
there on the top.
Yeah, look at the big word wall up there.
Yeah.
That you have to.
Sorry, that was last week's word. So I think that there's I guess what I'm saying is, like everything, there's no, you can only do it this way, but what we do add needs to be because of something we've seen in the children, or because of something we know about real development, and not just whatever they say I have to have 17 alphabet references on my walls or whatever regulations say,
or having to write words because your curriculum says you have to write the word. Like, to me, that makes no sense, having the word wall where you have those scripted words where it's like, if it doesn't connect to the child's world,
especially.
And so and Heather, I did something similar too, where I just had like I called them word banks, but every child had a little index card and a ring, and they did not have to write. They didn't have to put words onto the word bank. It was just available if they ever asked me, how do you spell this? It's like, well, let's get your word bank, and it I connected, and so they always had it, but it was not required. And some kids, we had to go through several word banks because they were so interested. And then I've had other kids who could care less. And
like on the first day they'd be into it, and then
and then it's like, this is a serving purpose for me, and that was fine. So but it was following what was important to each individual child, and respecting that.
So I just was thinking, I can't think of a time that a child has used an alphabet poster on the wall, but I can think of many who wanted letter magnets or cookie cutters or whatever.
And that's one of those ones where that is something that kids use. Like,
it's meaningful to what they're doing.
It's exactly. And for some kids, it's just different shapes. And for some kids, it's like, I want to spell my name, or I want to spell whatever. And then those things are usually like, they only have the alphabet, and most people have more than one of the same vowel in their name.
And there's not enough magnets yet.
And they're not made for that, and it's like, well, why would you make these and just have one A?
Exactly.
What is Sarah supposed to do?
Right.
Or Heather with the one E.
Or one H.
Although that would be, you could just skip that last E, and
I could
have and then be like,
right. Then I'm fancy.
Yeah.
Those letter magnets I love, but this is off topic, but sort of on topic. I have a really intense childhood memory of prying those little magnets out of the magnet letters and like doing things with just the magnets and scrapping the letters. So still as an adult, I still really want to do that whenever I see those refrigerator letter magnets. Christmas is coming.
Okay, I see you're dropping hints. All right.
Don't buy me just magnets. I need to be able to pry them out of the letters. Okay.
Should I get you a screwdriver with it, just so you?
No, I've got that covered.
Okay.
I've got the tools. Anyway, can we do one more thing? And then, and then probably time to wrap up. But so also another thing that really resonated to me in the section about materials and experiences to support the visual development you've been talking about, you have a section called "This is a Teacher Book."
Yes.
So let's end it up by talking about that idea of these are teacher books. What do you mean? What's the story there?
So like we all have like and I did too. Like you have your set of teacher books, and then you have like your kid books, like so it's like teacher worthy versus child worthy.
Right.
And this was one of the last years I was in the classroom, and honestly, the child that I specifically wrote about in this book just got married like a couple months ago. So this was but I would read a book at group time, and kids would always ask me, can I look at your book? And I'd be like, oh no,
Yeah.
this is my book. And
Yeah.
in this one little girl, like would just for 5 days in a row. And I, was training at that point still. And I was talking about extending the experience and following children's cues, and child repetition is important. But every time this child asked me for my book, I was saying no. And I finally I just kind of had this epiphany, and I was like, wait, first of all, I'm showing that I'm incapable of sharing, and I mean, in which I know that there's, but
yeah.
I was kind of going, no, you can't have my book. And then I was like, I'm telling her that I don't trust her, to take care of my book. And then I'm like, then I'm stopping an experience that she's wanting or is needing to have. So I finally relinquished my book, and it came back to me in perfect condition. And it was just this aha moment in my life. And I'm like, why have I been depriving children of not even my books, but books that I consider I have to take care of. And from then on out, even the books that I had, around the environment or in the literacy center were always nice books. I'm like, okay, they need better than the secondhand,
yes,
they need to have good quality books. And so that was a big aha moment in my classroom career.
Yeah, I definitely have done that, and probably pretty recently, but then you have to start thinking about, okay, what need are they asking me to help meet when they want to see my book, or when they need to hold that teacher book in their own hands. And are we sort of gatekeeping literacy at that point? And book enjoyment, and all, but so I take the paper cover off, I'm not an idiot.
You don't get the dust jacket.
Right, the dust jacket. No, that's what it's called. Yes. I don't know much about books. I don't know what they're all what the parts are all called. So I just thought that was a section that would really resonate, because we all probably have our collection of teacher books. And a lot of times too, I guess I just want to acknowledge, a lot of times it's because we paid for our teacher books. And it's, it's our own budget, and we don't, we can't just be buying the same book over and over, but we can also model how to interact with that book, and show them that we trust them, instead of making it this kind of mysterious thing that they have to try and get away with. Look, you know what I mean? So they kind of come into it with a little bit of a different approach than if it's been sort of kept back as this thing you can't have.
Right, which gets into a little bit also of that thing. And now I don't have the book open right now.
Have you ever had it?
What's it? Well,
you said that 5 times. I don't have
people have cheap books.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's let's get the Scholastic, those $2 books or whatever. You get the free one because the parents ordered, and it's they're put together so poorly that they are going to rip.
Yeah.
They tend to be, for whatever reason, it seems like you could do it with quality, well-written books, but usually once in a while they are, but mostly they're not. Teachers will just buy books at yard sales or whatever, or get with the center we're opening, we're getting a lot of donations, and we're very much go through these. We were just doing it today. Only choose the ones that you would actually buy for the kids. Because even though they're donated, if the book's not good enough to buy, it's not good enough to give to a child.
I had a very wonderful, kind and generous parent volunteer who was also Gus's mom, and Gus is famous on the podcast now, but she volunteered.
I know Gus.
Yeah, we all do.
All stories.
Everybody does. But she volunteered to come in, and she reinforced all my paperback Scholastic books with packing tape along the spine and on the inside cover, at least, so that it didn't rip up as easily. But that's one parent volunteer in all these years that has actually come in and done that for me. But there's an idea, if you're concerned about the the longevity of your paperback.
Right.
Yeah.
Children, there are some things you can do.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I do want to clarify something when I said,
Yeah.
showing that I couldn't share. I do not believe in making children share.
Okay, yeah.
I want to make sure that did not come across the wrong
Yeah,
way.
yeah,
Right.
no, that
Right.
But,
yeah.
I was capable of sharing my book, and so
Yeah.
I just wanted to clarify that.
That is important. I know, because otherwise, if you're like me, you'd be laying in bed at 2 a.m. being like, God, everyone's going to think that I think every child should
Right.
always share now. Yeah, no.
Heather, on
Yeah.
the other hand, does think all children should be forced to share.
Yeah, that's a key tenet of my belief system. It's not.
Yeah.
Probably people know that by now. Anyway, Mike, did you have any last things? I know I said that was going to be my last thing.
Not really. I mean, just that I guess I'm just going to echo Heather that everyone should have this book.
Thank you.
Because it really does just bring it out. And I think even some people, when you read it, then it's like, oh, you could look at anything now. Now let's look at math skills. What needs to happen before math?
I told her the next one needs to be a math book.
Right.
But we could take some of these things to the same. We could apply already things you've written here.
Right. Yeah, for sure. Yeah. Yeah. But no, so everyone should get the book. And I guess I don't have anything.
That's all. Sorry.
Well, after you say that, what more is there? Because then the person will read it.
That's right.
Because I feel like we could have had this hour-long discussion on any of the chapters too.
Yes.
Right.
Yeah.
But I think I appreciate when we are able to just focus on a portion.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Me too.
So,
me too.
Yeah. Oh.
Well, thanks, Stacy, for your
Thank
book.
you guys.
Being
Thanks,
here.
Stacy.
Thank y'all for all the nice things you said.
I'm sincere. I mean, it just really is exciting. I was, again, at NACE, I spent a lot of time just in the expo, bouncing around from publisher table to publisher table. And so I spent a lot of time with the exchange folks too. And they had it. And so when it, I guess where I was going was when it came up in that DEY session, I was like, they've got it for sale at the exchange booth if you hurry.
Booth number 472.
Yeah. So anyway, I really think it's such a valuable contribution to what we're trying to do for children, and I'm really grateful for it. I'm going to be using it in the spring in my literacy class, actually.
Yay.
So I'm very excited about that. So thanks for being
one
on
last
again.
thing, actually, I found out, I didn't even notice, but the cow duck actually has the letter C.
Oh.
I was. So
I think it's making fun of those things, though.
Those things,
sorry.
yeah.
Yeah.
There's a visual discrimination example there because it's a black and white spotted duck with those red letters.
Oh yeah, there's a lot. We just these
going on.
ducks. I think we could do a whole episode.
A whole podcast on just
Wouldn't make a great
Just the duck,
podcast though.
yeah.
Yeah.
We'll do your
Although we
duck
just
show
did an
later.
hour-long episode about visual development.
That's true.
Most people will just listen to and not see anything.
That's true.
Wow. Yeah.
How's that for-
Sorry. Yeah, I think we should stop now. We're clearly out of content. So thank you, Stacy. Thank you, Mike.
Thank you.
Yeah,
Thanks everybody for listening to another episode of That Early Childhood Nerd. We'll see you next week.